breaking down some Niner football. Looking forward to the Falcons game. What could be better? Definitely not watching the fucking Bears and the kind of fucking Commanders. Hello and welcome to Niner Nights Nonsense. And if you're here, at least you're not watching the Bears and the Commanders because that's fucking a dumpster fire. I think it's 3-0 at halftime. My fucking goodness gracious, God almighty. If the Niners did that, I would drive to Levi's Stadium and I would burn the field. And after I burned the field, I would find someone to make me a bomb and I would blow up the stands because 3-0 at halftime and there's no rain. There's no inclement weather. It's just that they're both teams have dog shit offenses. Niner here with you once again, as always. I swear like 4 times in the first minute of this show, which if we were like a monetized channel, we wouldn't be making any money. So there we go. Jamal Armstrong with me, as always. How are you doing, man?
Hey, man, I'm doing well. It's good to see you guys and talk with you guys again. I think it was, 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago that we did a show with all 3 of us. And I enjoy doing shows with the 2 of you as well, too. So it's definitely good to see you guys. It's good that it seems like the 49ers are, seeming to find a rhythm here on offense a little bit and starting to hit the ground running. We're getting further in this season. And I think it was last week I said, the further we get in this season, teams will start pulling, separating themselves. We'll start to find out kind of who they are. Looks like the 49ers are starting to figure out who they are. And, hey, I don't want to jinx it, but 2 weeks of turnover-free football for Jimmy Garoppolo. I love it.
And we'll talk more about that as the show goes on. As always with me also is Niner Kevin. How are you doing, man?
What's up, guys? Doing well. Like Jamal said, we're on a little bit of a winning streak, which is nice to see. We always seem to kind of go on one of these winning streaks. 2019 we won the first 8. And then last year we were 3-5 and reeled off 4 or 5 straight. So we're definitely picking up some momentum. And it's good to see we're playing good, sound football. The defense is still lights out. And as Jamal said, we're seeing, pretty good football from Jimmy Garoppolo. And hopefully he keeps it up because if he doesn't turn the ball over, we're going to be looking really, really good down the stretch.
First of all, let's say hello to 49ers Throwback. How are you doing?
What's up, man?
And hello to Damian Lee. How are you doing, man? Thanks for tuning in. So next week, things will be a little different. We're going to do the 2 shows again. A lot to talk about before Kansas City. Jamal, I hope you're going to join me and Chris Polo on Sunday. It's going to be fun. We're going to do standing room only. So next week we'll do Tuesday. We'll do a show, and we'll do a show Thursday, basically mainly focused on the Chiefs, both of those shows. But this is not next week. This is this week. And the 49ers, we haven't talked since they beat the Carolina Panthers, who might actually be the worst team in the NFL. Let's talk a little bit about the game with Carolina, what happened, some of the injuries they suffered from, and then we'll get into that Atlanta Falcons team, which I also think is a non-factor, much like the Carolina Panthers were. But, what was some of the biggest things you guys saw from the matchup with Carolina that were, things that you were like, this is pretty good, because you should generally stomp a bad football team. You should generally beat the hell out of bad football teams. The Buffalo Bills do it. The Kansas City Chiefs do it. And those are the best teams in the NFL and the AFC. And so when you see the 49ers go into Carolina with a team that just has nothing going for them and just absolutely stomp them, what was the first thing that came to your mind, Jamal?
Yeah, man. I think you said it right there, right? We played a bad football team. Now, that doesn't mean every facet of their team is bad. They actually have a really good defense. I think their defense is like low-key undersold because their offense is so bad. It almost reminds me of how we started off the season last year. And now I think that we're still a tier above them defensively. But we did start off 3-5, and we weren't able to, consistently stay on the field offensively and have drives continue, especially on third down. I believe we were sub 31% on third downs through the first 3 weeks of the season, or through the first 5 weeks of the season last year. And sorry, it's a little loud in here. Is it too loud?
You're good.
Okay, you can still hear me? Okay. So, no, I believe when we started the season last year, we were like sub 30% on third downs. And it kind of reminds me of this Panthers team because I do think they have a lot of good talent defensively. Because they've been so bad, they've been able to draft really well, but they suffer from really bad quarterback play. So their defense has kind of been undersold. But the two main takeaways I take from this game, 37-15. And then when we played them, I believe last time, what was it, 21 and 21? 51-13, right? So you don't get too high, you don't get too low on games like these. I think the 49ers absolutely took care of business the way they should have. And like we said a second ago when I first started, it's 2 straight weeks of turnover-free football for Jimmy Garoppolo. And then, does that mean he threw, every single pass that wasn't like turnover worthy? No, not at all. I'm saying the end result was that there wasn't a turnover, there wasn't a pick, there wasn't a fumble. So when the 49ers can play mistake-free football and truly get out of their own way, they'll win a lot of games. And then if they're able to, kind of take it up another step when they're playing the better teams, they have the defense to be in every single game that we play in, even against Patrick Mahomes. I know we'll talk about this next week. They're missing one key piece of a guy over there. That was, to me, the difference in that game when we played them in the Super Bowl. So my big key takeaways from this game, the score, obviously 37-15, non-turnovers throughout the course of the game, and then the defensive line, 7 sacks this game, coming off of 6 sacks last week against the Rams as well, too. If we can continue up that type of production, I think we have a really solid football. We already have a solid football team. We can go really far. Now, we have injuries and stuff that we'll talk about, I'm sure. So, second guys will get their chances. But I look at those things and I say, you know what? That's a good recipe. The way we won this week is a good recipe for how we can win going forward.
And we'll get into the injuries. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. And what I want to talk to Kevin about is Jimmy Garoppolo's playing mistake-free football. And I think that our good friend of the channel, Jesse Naylor, posted a graphic that basically said currently, obviously this is currently, Jimmy Garoppolo is on pace to have 22 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. If he does that, the Niners are Super Bowl champions. It's not even a fucking question if they're Super Bowl champions. That's all he needs to do is not turn the ball over. And so I'm not saying we're seeing like a new Jimmy Garoppolo or anything like that, but we're seeing a Garoppolo that Kyle Shanahan has basically said, you're not fucking this up for me. I'm going to give you the easiest throws possible, and you're going to throw them in those windows. And if the window's not there, you take a sack, you throw it away. And maybe that's what's going on, or maybe Garoppolo he knows he's playing for a contract. Kevin, what do you think it is that is really leading to the fact that Garoppolo's playing, 2 games, obviously knock on wood, right? But mistake-free football, not turning the ball over, which is what this offense absolutely needs.
I mean, I think you just kind of explained it, but it's interesting, right? Because 3 weeks ago, he stepped out of the back of his own fucking end zone. And then the next week,
we had a show about that.
And then the next week, he plays almost, I don't want to say flawless, but like a solid game against the Rams. Exactly the type of football that we needed him to play. I mentioned this in a space earlier. I think Kyle Shanahan, with Jimmy Garoppolo, you have to cater your game plan to the defense's weaknesses. Now, in most cases, if you have a top-level quarterback, you can game plan to attack the weaknesses of their defense, but if they make adjustments, usually the quarterback, if they're a top 10, is going to overcome that, right? So what I think Kyle has done is I think he's opened up his playbook more. I think he's scheming more things open. I think Kyle's at his best when how do I say this? Kyle Shanahan is at his best calling plays and scripting plays when we're seeing what Jimmy Garoppolo does. Because the reason why Jimmy Garoppolo is playing well is because Kyle Shanahan is putting him in a place to be successful, right? And so the game plan against the Rams, I mean, I've said it multiple times, but our game plan was basically bubble screens because they were collapsing at the line. They were loading the box. And Kyle said, okay, you're going to do that. You're going to try to stop a run. Well, we're going to run the ball by throwing bubble screens outside, and they're not going to be able to get wide in the defense and be able to stop that. I think that was Kyle Shanahan. And I know I crap on Garoppolo for that type of game plan, but I mean, he didn't complete a pass further than 10 yards in that game. So, and then what Kyle did this past week was the run game was working early. So I think what Kyle did, he established the run game and then he established the RPO and the passing after that. Now I will say Garoppolo made a couple of really solid plays when he was under pressure very quickly and got the ball out and identified single coverage, which I think that's something that we've wanted him to get better at since he's been here, and he's not really the best at that. So maybe he can watch that on film and be more confident in identifying what he sees pre-snap. So post-snap, he can actually see what the defense is doing and premeditate what they're going to do and identify better matchups. Maybe this was the game where he needed to prove to himself that he could do it. I mean, sometimes you have to prove to yourself that you're capable of things right before you do it again. So that's what I think about Jimmy. Nate, like you said, if he plays mistake-free football, if he has 24 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, we'll win the Super Bowl.
It's not even a question.
That sounds so foreign.
It's not even a question.
Wow.
It's not even a question, and that's the thing is, obviously, I know the offense has struggled a little bit, but I think Kyle Shanahan's offense always struggles. But now, they're playing 2 bad teams back-to-back. If they blow out both these teams, if they blew out one already, they blew out this other one, I think that maybe we can start really talking about this team being ready. I mean, they beat the shit out of the Rams, guys. I don't know. I think the last time we talked was when they beat the shit out of the Rams. They beat the ever-loving hell out of the Rams. And I understand the Rams have their own issues, but the Rams are still the Super Bowl champs. Like, that's not – you don't just win the Super Bowl. Like, it doesn't just fucking happen, or we would have won it years ago. Like, it just doesn't happen. And so when they beat the hell out of the Rams, something seemed like it was up. And then the offense wasn't – the offense didn't really get going in that Rams game too much, but it got going in this Carolina game. And I suspect it's going to continue going in this Falcons game and then into this Kansas City game where we just don't want to shoot out. That's the ultimate goal. You just don't want to shoot out with Patrick Mahomes, a.k.a. the best quarterback in the entire NFL. And so, you're thinking about what went right in Carolina. I just want to talk to you guys about – I want to see what you guys think what went wrong in Carolina. Obviously, great win, all that stuff, but they suffered some injuries. It looks like Nick Bosa probably won't play this week, but he'll be back for Kansas City. They're just kind of being precautious with it, which is smart because it's a groin injury. You want to be careful. But the biggest injury of this game was Emmanuel Moseley. And, when you think about this secondary and what they've been able to do this season with this pass rush, Jamal, how do you feel about the fact that they're losing one of their best corners? Even though the pass rush is still elite, still great, they're still seeing 5 sacks a game, they're still, playing super well. Do you think we'll see a drastic change in the coverage grades or how good the coverage is with a different corner out there? Do you think that it's more based because the pass rush is so good, Mosley's playing well? And obviously, I know Mosley's a terrific corner. I'm not denying that. What I'm saying is this pass rush is so good, I feel like you could have Ambry Thomas out there, and I don't think it would be drastically different. Obviously, there'd be differences because he's not as good. But I think that because of the pass rush being so good, it leads to, the corners maybe not having to be on their man like stink on shit. Can you get what you're saying?
Yeah, no, I do understand what you're saying. And I think, to answer your question, I almost think it's twofold because, yes, we did suffer a lot of, we've suffered some injuries this season. And obviously, Bosa goes down. We don't think he'll probably play this week. He probably doesn't need to play for us to still be able to play.
No, he shouldn't play. If you need Bosa to play against the Atlanta Falcons, then you have more problems because the Atlanta Falcons are awful.
So Bosa shouldn't play. I don't expect Bosa to play. But then, like you just said, yes, Emmanuel Moseley goes down as well, too. And so in this game, we get to see some depth, right? We'll be able to see what.
Womack, right? It'll be Womack starting there, I think, right?
Is that what they're saying? That was the question that I had for you guys too, because I have been really busy this week, so I haven't been tapped into what's been going on Twitter.
I don't think Verrett's ready to start. I think Verrett's kind of still a week off.
Yeah,
but I think that Womack will start, and they'll see how it goes. And if it goes well, then he'll continue to start. If it goes poorly, and there's certain things that happen with him, then I think they'll bring Verrett in. But I think Womack gets to start because I just don't think Verrett's fully ready. But I mean, I could be wrong. It depends what Kyle said this week.
And the question there is, do they think that they can slide? Do they think that they can slide Diameter Lenore outside, and then do they want to put Womack in the slot, or vice versa? Would they rather see Womack out wide? I tend to think they'll probably go with Womack out wide, just because I do think Lenore has been playing really, really well. Like to the point that he's taken the job from Womack that we all thought was going to be the starter at nickel.
Lenore's been great, absolutely.
Lenore's been awesome, and so But with that being said, it almost makes you think, like, does Kyle say, you know what, I trust this kid. He has, when he first came to the 49ers as a rookie just a year ago, he did play on the outside as well too, mainly due to injuries. Now, he didn't keep the job, and then there were some, things that happened in his personal life that kept him away from football, and then he didn't see the field a whole lot more after that, but he's come back really strong this year. And so, yeah, the question is, do we see Lenore go out wide? Do we see Womack? Either way, it does seem at this point in time, it'll be the both of them probably should see a lot of snaps. And so really, just to get back to your main point, you asked the question, like, will we see a major drop-off? And I'm going to go ahead and say I don't think we'll see a major drop-off, but if we do, I don't think it starts this week. I mean, we're going up against the Atlanta Falcons, and while I do think they are better than we thought they were going to be, and by we, I mean the general public, I still don't think they're great. Now, they have some playmakers, and what I mean by that is when plays break down, they have guys that can make plays. I think Mariota is a athletic enough quarterback that while I don't think he's a great quarterback, he has some intangibles that could give the 49ers defense some fits, on a play or two here and there. He may be able to extend a drive because he picked up, he got 7 yards on a 3rd and 5 with his legs. Like, he can do that. He also can, make plays with his legs for his receivers. But I don't think this is the game where we see that come to I don't think that he's a good enough quarterback that he's going to be able to exploit our weaknesses. And so you look at, Mariota, Tyler Algier, rookie running back, outside of Drake London, Olamide Zaccheaus, their wide receiver too, he doesn't scare me. Kadarius Hodge, journeyman. Kyle Pitts, I believe, is still questionable. So I would say I think Kyle Pitts probably plays, but I think this defense has proven already that they're good enough and we have enough depth that I think you can get away with an Ambry Thomas, or you can get away with a Womack or a Lenore. So I don't think this is the game where we'll see maybe the 49ers weaknesses, especially by picking on a corner. I don't think this is the week we see it, just because I don't think that their offense is that good. And then on the flip side of that, if Jimmy Garoppolo and the offense is able to stay on the football field and have, I don't want to say long, drive grinding drives, but if we're able to stay on the field long enough and stay ahead of the chains, I think this is still the type of game where you can keep your defense fresh, because I don't really respect the Atlanta Falcons offense enough that your defense can stay fresh enough, and you still have the depth in the defensive line. I know Ebucom got hurt as well too, but you have enough depth there that you could look at this and say, okay, this team we're able to stay fresh. We should be able to force some 3 and outs. And I don't think this is a game where their offense runs on us a lot.
Yeah, I agree with you. So arguing with BMAC in the chat, to be honest with you, about, he says that he thinks that, Kevin, I'll send this question over to you. Actually, you know what? We'll talk about the Falcons in a minute. We're not going to go that far. Well, let's not switch to the Falcons yet. I really think that this team has shown that they understand what has happened in previous years, where when guys get hurt, they tend to, not have positions to fill that. Remember last year, Drake Kirkpatrick and Josh Norman, and obviously I didn't think Josh Norman was as bad, but Drake Kirkpatrick was terrible. And so they realized that, and now they have Womack and Thomas and Verrett, and Lenore's playing great. There's the corner depth on this team is much better. And so when Ambry got hurt, I didn't feel as scared about it as I would another year. When Verrett went down last year, I was deathly afraid. And, they still got to the NFC Championship game with fucking Josh Norman, who has one leg and a peg leg on the other leg, and his arm is actually robot arm that he got the guy's been in the league for 12 years. And so he was kind of washed up, and they still got to the damn NFC Championship game. So, that's D'Amico Ryans, that's everything. One of the guys that I think is really important for the Kansas City game is Eric Armstead. And I think that you kind of noticed it a little bit. Christian McCaffrey got that easy touchdown, and obviously that was the only touchdown they got, really. But that was because they didn't have Eric Armstead filling that, that running role. And so what we're seeing is a lot of guys, Kevin, stepping up. This defensive line, they're still getting tons of sacks, tons of pressures, despite the fact that in the last game, and yes, it was Carolina, they had almost none of their starters healthy. No Kinlaw, no Armstead, no Bosa for most of that game. And so, and Ebucom, I think, went out too. And so it's one of those things where this next man up mentality is so good because of how talented they are. And I really feel like they have found the solution to the injuries that they know they suffer every year. What do you think about that, Kevin?
I mean, I think that's a great point. I mean, I think one of the key things, and we obviously give the players credit on the field for coming in and stepping up, right? But I think one of the most important things somebody on the bench that's going to come into a game can do is just always mentally just be locked in. And I think one of the things that is key to having your team always ready to go and have that next man up mentality are the coaches. I think D'Amico Ryans has this defense locked in. I don't think D'Amico Ryans cares if the entire starting unit was out. I think we would still see a solid defensive performance because he has these guys that much locked in. You can see it on the field. They're communicating. Week 1 was kind of weird. There were 2 busted coverages. We haven't seen another, to my knowledge, we haven't seen another busted coverage. So they cleaned that up very quick. And then the other thing I credit are the assistant coaches to D'Amico on the defensive side. They are so well coached and so disciplined. And I think to me is you can elevate your game wherever you are on the depth chart as long as 1, you're disciplined, and 2, you're mentally ready to go, and 3, you're communicating with your teammates. And that's why I think they've been so successful are those 3 keys. They're communicating, they're staying locked in, and they have a fearless leader on the defensive side of the ball, D'Amico Ryans. And like I said, I don't think it would matter who was playing on the defense. I think we would have a good defense because I think D'Amico Ryans is that great of a assistant coach. In my opinion, he's the best assistant coach in the entire NFL, and it's not even close at all. And so those are the things that I'm really looking at is just their discipline. They're not really committing penalties. I mean, they have a luxury in Charvarius Ward, who's an absolute lockdown corner, which is allowing the defensive line to do basically whatever they want. Because if you're taking a guy out of a game, the rest of the defense is going to eat. And we have other guys like Drake Greenlaw stepping up. I think he's leading the team in tackles this year.
Yep.
So, I mean, if it's the first few weeks, it was Hufanga. And then Drake Greenlaw had a bad game. Then he started picking it up. Bosa's been consistent. But then Ebukam, I think, is number 2 on the team in sacks. So it's just like there's just endless waves of players, and you don't know who's going to be making an impact the next week, which is a credit to the players for working hard, being prepared, but to the coaches because they know how good this team is. And I don't think D'Amico really cares who's out there because they're so well coached. I mean, one of the huge keys to winning is coaching and discipline. If you're committing a bunch of penalties and you're not coached well, you're not going to win a lot of games. So I credit D'Amico Ryans. I credit the players. I credit the position coaches. They're all doing a phenomenal job. And honestly, if we don't have Ebukam and Bosa and our whole starting defensive line can't play, I don't think it's going to matter, guys. I really don't.
If I could just add just a little bit too, because I actually 100%, Kevin, I agree with you on that. And I just wanted to kind of reiterate, like, what we think Nick Bosa is going to be out, right? Like, we don't expect him to play. Eric Armstead, not going to play. Javon Kinlaw, I'd be shocked if he played. Samson Ebukam, now he's a maybe, but that's one of the 4, right? Yeah, we think he'll probably play. The other 3, I don't think will play. So we should see a lot of Drake Jackson. We should see a good amount of Kevin Givens. We should see Hassan Ridgeway. We should see Charles Omenihu, Kerry Hyder, Kamoko Toure. And I mentioned those specific names because, yes, that's the rotation. Those are the guys who will be coming in. Like Kevin just said, you have to give the coaches credit for putting these guys in position. But then also, like, the selflessness that these players have, because Omenihu did start and can be a starter for other teams. Like he did. Mm-hmm. Hassan Ridgeway was a nice piece for the Eagles last year. Depth piece still, but very good. He, too, could start for certain teams. Kevin Givens has been awesome to start this season. I think very underratedly very good this year. Drake Jackson, we all think very highly of him, right? First-round talent, got picked in the second round. Kerry Hyder has been a really good journeyman and did start for the Seahawks last year. And then Kamoko Toure, like this is a guy coming back from injury, but before pre-injury, he was putting up numbers with Colt. So the selflessness that these players have, but then also, like Kevin just said, I agree with him 100%. These coaches, the buy-in that these coaches and the players have together in order to play football for one another rather than being like jealous, like, oh, this person's getting the start and I'm not playing that much. That says a lot about these players, says a lot about the locker room, and it says a lot about these coaches as well, too. And that's why, in my opinion, like I'm not freaking out that we have the starters probably not going to play. We have really, really, really good depth. And then the truth of the matter is, like, the football game probably comes down to that position group versus the Falcons' offensive line. A lot of games really do. We just don't talk about it because it's not real sexy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think that a lot of the defense has stepped up, and one thing I think that people kind of, and I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. A lot of people, when these injuries happen, they constantly complain, like, why are we always injured? Why are we injured? I think that it's because of the 49ers, the way they play. I mean, can you think of a team in the NFL that plays as physical as the 49ers on defense? Because I understand the offensive guys are getting hurt too, but the offense plays pretty physical too. George Kittle likes to hit. Jeff Wilson likes to hit. Elijah Mitchell maybe not so much, but Debo loves to hit. Ayuk maybe not the same, but Juwan Jennings is trying to hit people as much as he can, and he's a wide receiver. These guys play so physical that I think that it's kind of what makes the 49ers so interesting is because they cause these teams to just want to take their ball and leave. Because when you're physical for 3 quarters and another team is not as physical, it's not fun to play them. When you're going to lose anyway, it's not fun to play the 49ers. And I think because they're so physical, they're going to get injured. This is just who this team is. And I think Kyle kind of knows it, but he doesn't understand, exactly how to explain, hey, our guys play really physical, like that's going to happen, because that doesn't really make sense. But I think personally, that's the reason the 49ers are always injured every year, because they play so freaking physical.
I agree, Nate. That's a really great point. I think when you're watching a game on TV, you can tell, but you can't really fully tell like until you're at a game. Like I was at the Seahawks game this year when Trey went down. Like you could just see the physicality, right? Play in and play out. And I think that's something that, like you said, an opponent feels. Like I think it's a mental thing that happens when you're beating a team down and maybe the score is even close, because we were outplaying the Rams, but the score was still close. We were being more physical than the Rams. It was a 1-score game until Hufanga put it away. But you could just tell that the Rams were deflated, and frankly, they didn't want to be there anymore. And I think one of the things that what is amazing about this defense is how do I say this? There's a way that as a defense, you could literally suffocate the offense where they have no room to go at all. And they had a couple nights. What's that?
The Seattle game.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and so I think there's and you can see it in the offense. Like you can see it in Baker Mayfield. He's not trying to throw downfield. He's checking down. Like he just knows that there's nothing that you can do. And basically, I'm not saying that they're tanking or giving up, but it's like it's almost a mental thing that you notice that like this team, they don't feel like they can do anything. They know they're not going to win. So that's what I took away from the Carolina game. As soon as Baker's, I obviously not wishing injury on anybody, but when he started limping and you could kind of see that like, man, like today is going to be a long day. It's over. Like you can't come back from that. So I think that's what this defense does to opposing offenses, and they're going to continue to do it this year.
I'm 100% in agreement with you guys, and I agree with Nate with you, Nate. I agree. I think Kevin, you said that Nate made a great point, and I agree with that. We do have a lot of injuries, but it is the way that we play football, right? We are aggressive. We do and I hate to say this because it probably sounds like I'm a homer, but I do watch other teams. Like I watch football. I'm a 49er fan, and I enjoy watching. I watch all the 49ers games, but I enjoy football. Like I watch other teams play because I like players on other teams as well, too. And I like to watch good football. That being said, when I watch the 49ers play football, and especially on the defensive side, like I don't see many. I'm trying to think of another team besides maybe the Bucks. I think the Bucks are another team that comes to mind. Outside of them, I don't see another team that, and even I think the way the Bucks do it, it's a tier down. I don't see another team swarm to the football and gang tackle the way the 49ers do. I really don't. And we had Kevin and I just made this point a second ago, and I agree. You have to give credit to the players. You also have to give credit to the coaches and everybody else in that organization as well, too, because the way I heard you guys just talk about this and the fact that we do have these injuries, I started thinking back like, man, I just wish I could be a fly in the wall when they're, having these free agent talks and bringing certain guys in. I wish I could be a fly on the wall during the season or doing the off season when they're scouting guys. What do they actually look for? There are certain traits that they look for, right? They do want physical guys that are going to come in at receiver and block. Like you could have all the talent in the world. They want you to have that dog. You have to block to play for Kyle Shanahan as well, too, right? When it comes to corners, you have to be able to run fit really well, whether you're an inside or outside corner. Like you have to be able to get to the football. And it's the same thing with your safeties. Now, not only do you have to be able to run fit, you got to be smart as well, too. So I can look at the 49ers football team and do my research and know those things. But like, what kind of questions do they ask to get into like the psyche of these guys' heads to know, like, I do want to amend. I do want to bring in a Talanoa Hufanga. Like, what do they look for? What kind of questions? And yes, there have been unfortunate injuries that we've had over the course. There's always been injuries, right? But it seems like, especially for the 49ers, the past 6 years or so with Kyle Shanahan, it seems like it's a high alarming rate. And it's like a weird trade-off because I do want my players to play hard, like every down. I do want that. And injuries can happen, and it's different. When I'm talking about Trey's injury, that's different than seeing, Emmanuel Mosley go down. Like, it's different. But I want my players, if they're going to go down, I want them to go down because they were playing hard and they were playing the right way. And I think you get that from the 49ers. And you have to give credit not only to the players, but to the coaches as well, too, because I do think it's a mentality that you start building all throughout the season or all throughout the off season. You implement that during camp, and then you also see that play out throughout the season. But with implementing that, you have to have the right players for that as well, too. I think the 49ers have done a really, really good job of getting just tough, hard-nosed guys that are not afraid to take a hit, that are not afraid to lay a hit. It's weird to say, but even Jimmy Garoppolo is like that as well, too. He is a tough guy. For all the things he's not, he's a tough guy. And even though he's very up and down with his performances, he's done a really good job of bouncing back after an interception. He's always been good at that. He does a really good job of bouncing back after a bad game. Generally, he does that too. So the mental fortitude, I give those guys credit, and I would include Jimmy Garoppolo with that part.
One thing I'll say just real quick before we move on is I was watching some of the 2011, 2012, 2013 49ers earlier today at work, and all those guys on the defense were dogs. I mean, Justin Smith, dog. Alden Smith, dog. Ray McDonald, dog. I mean, even on the outside, like Terrell Brown, dog. Chris Culliver, dog. Whitner,
Carlos Rogers, yeah.
All of them. And Jamal, what you said, I mean, perfect. Because even though it's a different scheme, it's different defensive coordinator, obviously, different type players, different builds, all that, right? Every year there's gonna be something different. It's not gonna be the same. But this defense reminds me so much of that defense because they are tenacious. I mean, Hufunga's coming in here hitting hard. I mean, Gibson, Mosley, before his injury was literally putting his body on the line, tackling guys. And to me, like, that makes me, and I know I shit on the 49ers a lot, but honestly, like, if I'm going to be honest with you, I'm proud to watch the 49ers each and every Sunday, mainly because of the defense. But, man, I was watching them today, and I was getting flashbacks of, the Rams game and, this past game in Carolina, because this defense is physical and honestly all over the field, just freaking dogs, man. And I love it. This might be my favorite 49ers defense I've ever watched. I mean, I don't know, maybe.
Let's move on and talk a little bit about the Atlanta Falcons. Another bad football team, probably bottom 5 in the league. Obviously, they do have their players: Grady Jarrett, rookie Drake London, Kyle Pitts might play, maybe not. Who knows what's going on with them? I mean, what are your guys' initial thoughts on the Falcons and their weird season they've had where they almost beat the Rams. They take care of the Seahawks pretty easily. They barely beat the Browns. They play a decent game with the Bucks where they got cheated out of a win. I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on the Atlanta Falcons? Because they're kind of a weird football team because they're bad and the roster's not very talented, but they've kind of hit above their weight a little bit.
Kev, I want you to go ahead and take this one. I definitely was I went on a rat on the last one, so go ahead and you start.
Sure. I'm just gonna say score wise and stuff like this. This kind of reminds me of the first year with Kyle Shanahan because we were not a great football team, but I think we lost the first 5 or 6 games by a total of 11 points or something like that. Every game was close, and I just have a feeling that these guys are gonna continue to fight no matter what. I haven't watched the Atlanta Falcons. I have, I know players on their team, but I haven't watched them, and so I don't really know what their identity is. I'm sure I'll find that out on Sunday. But I don't think that this is going to be a complete dog walking. I don't. I think it's going to be decently close to where maybe we go up 2 scores, maybe 9 or 10 points late in the game to close it out. But I think it's going to be pretty close throughout, just because of the fighting spirit they have. And like Nate said, I mean, they were one bad call away from basically beating the Bucks. So and the Bucks are a good team. So I see a lot of fight in these guys. I see a lot of fight in Mariota. I think this might be a game where we put an exclusive spy on him. I think maybe we let Fred Warner play more coverage, and I wouldn't be surprised if Greenlaw's the spy because he has the speed to keep up with Mariota. So that would be my key on defense. On offense, these guys on their defense they run a 3-3-5. So I would imagine that we're going to run the ball very, very heavily against them because it's very difficult to stop a run with a 6-man box. So I think that running the football on offense is going to be a key. They have some playmaking guys in the secondary. AJ Terrell is a very good player. Casey Hayward is a really good veteran player. And they have a very solid defensive lineman in Grady Jarrett, who for some reason we have problems with guys that play inside. He can play inside and outside, but primarily he plays inside. But this is a game I can imagine we run the ball 40 times and we pass 18 to 20. That would be my game plan. And then on the defensive side for us, I would put a spy on Mariota to make sure he's not running crazy with his legs.
I think that's an awesome. Yeah, I think that was a great point, Kev. I think what you said about the spy with Greenlaw, I love that. I hadn't been thinking about that, but I think that's awesome. I think that's really smart. And the thing is too, I got to watch a decent amount, almost the whole game of the Bucks Falcons game. And while coming into this season, I'm a little bit higher on Mariota than I think most are, but saying I'm a little higher, that doesn't mean I think he's great or anything like that, because I don't think he's great. I think we know what he is, but I do think that historically, especially under the Shanahan regime, I think it's been proven that athletic, elusive quarterback fits.
Did we just lose him?
We might have lost him. I can't hear
him. Technical difficulties, aren't they great? When he's back, I'll bring him back up. Oh, I think he's back. Okay, cool. I will bring him back in then.
I'm so sorry. What did it cut off at?
You were saying in the Kyle Shanahan era they've struggled with, and then it kind of went.
Okay, so yeah, I do think they've struggled with more elusive type quarterbacks. When you play quarterbacks inside the pocket, they've been able to, in a sense, tee off or kind of know what's going to happen with that quarterback, and they've been able to get home. And while I don't think that the Falcons offensively are very good right now, I think it's very clunky, big play here, that here or so here and there. I do think that, and I kind of hinted at this a little bit earlier, I do think that Mariota has enough juice, and he's going to be the most athletic, elusive quarterback we played this season so far, which I think is good. I think that's a good test for us. But because I do think that they are, I don't want to be rude, but I'll say I think that they're a bit more inept in other spots, as well as the fact that I think that there is a cap with Mariota. I do think we win this game, and I think we win it outright. I think we win probably by 14 points. But the parts that the part that gives me some pause is the Falcons' offensive line. I think it's slightly underrated. I think Jake Matthews is a really good left tackle. Drew Dahlman, their center, not very well known. And then you look at Chris Lindstrom. I think Chris Lindstrom, their right guard, he's pretty good. I actually think that to me he's Pro Bowl caliber. He's been with the team for quite a few years now. And then Caleb McGarry. I remember that name. I don't know too much about him, but I think that their offensive line is slightly underrated. I just think that with a quarterback like Mariota, I've seen him kind of leave the pocket a little early a few times, and you can kind of understand why he's trying to make certain plays, especially with receivers that he has that don't really do a lot of separation. Big USC fan here. They drafted Drake London. I love Drake London. I think he's awesome. He's a bit more Mike Evans-like, though, rather than like a Tyreek Hill, right? He's not going to blaze down the field and like kill you. Now, if he gets separation, it's going to be because he ran a really crisp route. But with Drake London, he's more of, especially early as a rookie, he's more of a possession receiver and more of a contested catcher type possession receiver. So he's a guy you can go to early and often, but I didn't see that last week, and I haven't seen that the past couple of weeks. They haven't, while he's the featured guy and he's the number one guy, especially with Pitts out versus the Bucs, they didn't go to him often. I think he only had like 3, maybe 4 targets, and I think he was only targeted twice through the first like 3 quarters. So if you can get up on them, which I do think we can, like Kevin said, because we should be able to run on them, I think you can make them more one-dimensional, which will allow us to be able to tee off on them, and I kind of expect that to start happening. But I do think that this game will be slightly closer than I think on the outside, just looking in. You would think, oh, the 49ers, oh, Nick Bosa, yada, yada, yada. You have all these guys. They should be able to run away. Well, if you break it down and you look into these games like we're doing, and like others will do as well too, you look at it and say matchups-wise, I do think that we should win. I think their offensive line versus our defensive line, it's closer than it would be because of injuries, but I do still think that we can come away with, I'll say 4+ sacks. But then you look at the secondary, like Kevin had said, and that was a point I was going to make as well too. You look at their 2 outside corners, Casey Hayward, very good vet, clearly past his prime, but still very good. He's a very good corner, and they just needed to find a guy that was going to kind of settle in and be a solid corner, opposite of AJ Terrell, who is, in my opinion, a top tier type corner, very good. We saw what Deebo Samuel did to him last year, and Deebo Samuel can do that to literally anyone. But AJ Terrell, a very good corner. I think they are a bit weak when it comes to their linebackers, and I think that's perfect for Kyle Shanahan, and it's also perfect for Jimmy Garoppolo. They've got Michael Walker. He's out. I think he's going to be out. He's hurt. So I think they're going to start Troy Anderson at middle linebacker, and he's a rookie middle linebacker. So I think he's a guy that's going to come in. Kyle Shanahan, I think, not only with the run game, but also with Jimmy Garoppolo's strengths in the short to intermediate, I think he's going to really test Troy Anderson, probably play with his eyes, dress a couple things up. That's kind of what I expect. But Troy Anderson should start, Rashawn Evans, and then they have Adekunbo, I think that's how you say it, Ogundeji. I watched him last week. He kind of flashed a little bit. He was getting after the quarterback. I think he had a sack on Brady last week. He kind of flashed. And then they also drafted Arnold Ebiketie. I don't know how many snaps he's going to get. I think he's in a Drake Jackson type role to where he comes in on like pass rushing situations on third downs. I was really big on this guy coming out of the draft. So long story short, I think the Falcons have some things there that they're building on. They obviously drafted a quarterback as well too. But because of they're still in the building process, I think they'll be competitive with the 49ers. But I think the further we get into the game, the longer we get into the fourth quarter, I hate to say this because it sounds bad, but I think with the style of football that we play, they probably will sustain some injuries because I think we're going to start wearing on them, much like we just did this past week. Obviously, we won 37-15. We need to play turnover-free football to continue that. But because of I think they're competitive. I think they're still a couple pieces away. And I think ultimately Mariota doesn't put them over the edge. So I got the Niners in this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 49ers are going to win this game. I don't think this is really a game they should ever really be worried about. Like, the Niners shouldn't feel bad unless Jimmy Garoppolo just starts turning the ball over crazy. They're going to try and stop the run game. That's going to be their plan. And it's going to be up to Garoppolo to stay in the pocket and get the ball out to his playmakers, Debo, Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, Kittle, and find ways to get the ball down the field. I just think that the Falcons defense doesn't scare me. You know, I don't think they have the guys that they need to beat the 49ers. And that's kind of something that we'll talk more about with Kansas City is I don't think a lot of defenses the 49ers play for the rest of the season, besides maybe one in Tampa Bay, really has the chance to do what happened to Garoppolo when he played the Broncos, because the Broncos were a terrific defense, one of the best in the league. They just have no offense. And so that's why that game was so messy. But none of these teams are really going to be defensive heavy except for Tampa Bay. Kansas City is going to be offensive heavy, and it's going to be don't get it in a shootout, make sure your defense is turning the ball over or making stops. And so with the Falcons, I just don't see anything on offense that really scares me. You know, they have a rookie in Drake London. My God. Drake London, who, you know, obviously he's, you know, it's a first-year wide receiver. How often does a first-year wide receiver really go off and, like, do big things? I don't see it happening. Kyle Pitts, everyone who has him in fantasy hates their lives right now because he's just not doing anything. You know, Marcus Mariota is not a very good quarterback, just like Baker Mayfield. I think maybe Baker Mayfield might actually be a better quarterback than Marcus Mariota just because they're, you know, it's basically
Baker's
like picking between it's like basically between picking dog shit or picking dog shit that sat in the sun for 2 extra hours. Like, they're both terrible, right? And
Baker, Matt Ryan, and Trubisky, worst quarterbacks in the league this year. Bad.
Trubisky bad, yeah. I think Mariota's up there too. I think Carson Wentz is up there as well. And they're all bad quarterbacks. And so, you know, like that kind of stuff. Russell Wilson might actually be up there too. God damn, he stinks. And so when you play bad quarterbacks, you can make them make mistakes. And I think that they can get a pick six, they'll be fine. They'll, you know, win comfortably, cruise to a 10-point win, and everything will be fine. Do I think they're going to blow them out like they did Carolina? Maybe not as much so, because Carolina is just in disarray. They fired their head coach the next day. I mean, like, I don't see the Falcons firing their head coach the next day after they lose to the 49ers. They're a team that's kind of better built. You know, they have a long future ahead of them to figure out what they did or what to do, but they're going to draft a quarterback next year. They're probably going to end up getting, you know, a top quarterback like CJ Stroud or something like that, because they're so far off. And so when you play teams that are far off, or teams that, you know, just aren't really in the same stratosphere for you, you should win, and should win handily. I'm not saying they have to blow them out, but if they do blow them out, I'll be pretty happy, just because it's another team they knew they were better than. They came in and they took care of business, and I want them to stay healthy more than anything, because Kansas City is going to be a dogfight. Patrick Mahomes is playing MVP quality football right now. If not for Lamar Jackson, he would probably be the front runner for MVP. That team, despite the fact that they lost Tyreek Hill, has not lost a beat. And so for them just to get out of Atlanta with a win, get out of Atlanta with a win where they look good, where teams are like, God, the 49ers, God, Jimmy Garoppolo is not turning the ball over. That's all I really want. So, I mean, I'm thinking 27-10, 27-14, you know, something along those lines. They're clearly a better football team, and they're playing in a dome, which doesn't – when you play in a dome, that shouldn't, you know, affect you. I know it's turf and all that bullshit, but it's a dome. You shouldn't have any weather problems. Garoppolo should be able to continue his good play, because he's playing another bad football team, another team that's not going to get to him, another team that's not going to hopefully make him make too many mistakes. And I just think that they're a better football team. And so when I look at this matchup, as long as the defense doesn't just take a nosedive, the 49ers will win.
Yeah, and just real quick, like a question for both of you guys, because there was a question here for me. It said, did I give a score? I actually haven't given a score. I know Nate likes to do that like right there towards the end, so I'll give my score then. But my question, like for you guys, laying out my take, especially on the Falcons there, like I do think this can be a blowout, but I'm afraid to say like it will be a blowout. And the funny thing is, it's not anything to do with the Falcons per se, because I do think that they've actually played better than what most of us thought. But it's It's more so the fact that we've got injuries in key places right now that if they do things right, they could exploit. I don't expect them to, but what will we get from Womack if he starts out wide? What will we get from Ambry Thomas should he start out wide? Like, what's going to happen? And the funny thing is, I actually think it's, for me, if Kyle Shanahan and anybody else on the rest of the staff think that whether it's Lenore, whether it's Womack, or whether it's Thomas will be the outside corner for the foreseeable future, or especially even just for this season, if that's what they suspect, maybe Verrett's not able to come back. I'm not hoping that's the case, but maybe he's not as far along as we like. I don't know. Maybe there's going to be a setback. If that's the case, I don't know if there's a better soft landing spot to see those guys get their shot now. And what I mean by that is you're not going to be seeing Olamide Zaccheaus every week, right? We go up, we have the Chiefs in just a week. Drake London is a first-year starter. So if you want to see something from these corners, we're going to have to, right? Injuries have happened. We're going to need to see somebody step up. I don't know if there's a better soft landing for these guys to come in and play than this week. And so my question for you guys is, like, I haven't said this is going to be a blowout. I could see that happening. And the part of the reason I see that happening is if Tevin Coleman continues to play the way he has, if Jimmy Garoppolo continues to play the way he has, which I think can happen because I think his strengths, being the short and intermediate, is also where the Falcons' weaknesses on paper to me are. But for you guys, like, what do you guys think about that? Do we match up? Like, do you think it's going to be a blowout or not? If you don't, like, why do you think it won't be?
That's a great question. Just for me, I really only have two answers for that. I think one, the obvious answer is Jimmy Garoppolo shits the bed. The game's going to be close. On the defensive side, while we've been playing disciplined football and the second tier guys have come in and done well, the only reason why this game might be close on the defensive side is if we're committing penalties. I think that was our Achilles heel week one. We've cleaned that up, and we've looked pretty disciplined. But for any reason, look at the last couple weeks. There's been very questionable roughing the passer calls. So maybe some freak thing like that. Freak things do happen in the NFL. I mean, Chris Jones was robbed of a clean strip sack fumble, in recovery. So I think maybe if there's a couple pass interference calls that happen in the end zone, other than that, if Garoppolo plays fine, we win. If we don't commit a lot of penalties on defense, I think we win. So those are my only two real concerns.
Yeah, I mean, don't turn the ball over, don't commit penalties, play good defense. I think that's the kind of been the recipe for the 49ers wins, and I think they'll come away with a win here. Next week we'll be here twice talking about Kansas City. Jamal, if they want to check out your stuff, how can they do it?
Yeah, guys, I think the last final point I would say about this too is get home on Mariota. We got to get pressure. We've got to. Absolutely. As much as I expect it, like, we do have Drake Jackson. Probably, I don't know. I don't want to say he's going to get a start, but there's a good chance he could get a start, right? And just as much as Drake London is a rookie, so is Drake Jackson. I expect a lot from the kid because I think he's that talented, but he's got to get home. Omenahu's got to get home. Ridgeway, you got to step up. You guys got to fill in well on your run blocking assignments. That's the last thing I would say. The secondary should be just as good as the front seven, right? So get home. That being said, yes, where you guys can find me on Twitter, Young Jaw, my name right here on this side, right there, Young Jaw, but add 4, the numbers 49, and then the letters ER, Young Jaw 49er. You can find me there on Twitter. I didn't do a show this week with Amin. We've both been really busy. I was sick last week, so I wasn't able to do one then as well. We will be streaming this coming Monday at 7 o'clock on his channel, Amin the Dream. So subscribe to him if you get a chance to. And then, as always, like Nate said at the beginning, I'll be on again with him on Tuesday this next week. We'll talk a little bit about this game, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty with the Chiefs as well, too. You can find me at those two spots currently.
It's a huge week next week. Kevin, if they want to check out your stuff, how can they do it?
Hey, awesome. So you can see my Twitter handle right there at SF99er49 on Twitter. And then also I've been writing for Stadium Rant, the Niners Empire section. I have like 15 articles out now. So I just finished one on Jeff Wilson Jr. and kind of his journey in college and how he's kind of been the 49ers bell cow running back, if you will, the last few weeks. Did a piece last week on Deshaun Gibson, who's his PFF grade is like the number 2 overall safety in the NFL. So go check out that one as well. So those are the 2 platforms, Twitter, my handle there, and then Stadium Rant Niner Empire.
And we'll be live Tuesday, me and Jamal, 7 o'clock on here to talk all about the Chiefs game. And then on Thursday, me and Kevin will be live 7 o'clock to talk more about the Chiefs. It's Chiefs week next week. It's a lot of fun. It's a huge game, probably the biggest game of the season, because this is not only for revenge for Super Bowl, but it's also for bragging rights on if this team is ready for the Super Bowl. If they beat Kansas City, there is not a soul on this fucking planet who is going to say that the 49ers aren't going to the Super Bowl. And I think that's what we want at this point, because they're going to win this division, because my fucking God, it's a dumpster fire. If you want to check me out, it's at 90849 on Twitter. Make sure you go on the YouTube channel, subscribe, show your friends. We do the show every week, at least once a week, sometimes 2, depending on how big the game is. Always here for you. Love to have you in the comments. Make sure you subscribe. Once we hit 1,000, we're still going to give away a jersey. I know it's been a long time since I say that, but whenever we hit 1,000, whether it's in 2023 or 2024 or
now, subscribe
2026,
like and
there will be a jersey
and
giveaway.
Share it with everybody you know, please.
1,000. So be sure to check it out, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and one more thing: the hype train never stops, baby.